Rough night in Jericho, set Arizona desert, August 1967. The crew heard the scream first. High-pitched, terrified. A child scream, then crying, uncontrollable sobbing. They were filming a saloon scene, a raid, gunfire, chaos. There was a child extra in the background, 7 years old, a local kid from Tucson. His parents needed the money, $50 for a day's work. The scene required the child to look scared, terrified, running from gunfire. Director Laven had shot it 5 times. Each time the kid wasn't scared enough, wasn't believable, so Laven tried something else. Something he'd seen other directors do, something everyone knew happened but nobody talked about. He walked up to the child, grabbed him by the shoulders, shook him hard, started yelling inches from the kid's face, "You're going to die. They're shooting at you. You're going to die." The child started crying, real tears, real terror, perfect. Laven said, "That's what I need." He pushed the kid toward his mark. The crew stood frozen. This was wrong. Everyone knew it was wrong, but nobody moved. You don't challenge a director, you don't risk your job, you don't make waves. Then they heard something else, footsteps, fast, heavy. Dean Martin crossed the set in 4 strides, grabbed Laven's director's chair, kicked it over. The crash echoed across the sound stage. Laven spun around. Dean was standing there, 50 years old, face dark with rage. "You ever touch that kid again?" Dean said quietly, "And we're going to have a problem." What happened in the next 60 seconds would get Dean Martin blacklisted from working with half the directors in Hollywood, but it would also save a 7-year-old boy from something far worse than a bad performance. Summer 1967. Dean Martin was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. Television show, hit records, movies. Rough Night in Jericho was a Western. Dean played the villain. Alex Flood, a corrupt sheriff who terrorizes a small town. It was against type. Dean usually played heroes, charming guys, but he wanted the challenge, wanted to show range. Laven was directing. Laven had made decent westerns before, nothing spectacular but professional. Studio trusted him. Dean didn't know him well. They'd met during pre-production. Seemed fine, competent, no red flags. Production started in July. Location shooting near Tucson. Hot, brutal heat over 100 most days. The crew was miserable but professional. Dean was professional, too, showed up on time, knew his lines, did his work. He'd been doing this for 20 years, knew how sets operated, knew the hierarchy. Director was king. You didn't question, you didn't interfere, you did your job and went home. That was the rule. Dean had followed it his entire career until August 12, 1967. They were filming a sequence, a raid on the town saloon. Storm in, shoot up the place. Patrons scatter, chaos action. The scene required extras, lots of them. Men, women, children, make it look like a real town, real panic. The casting department had hired local people, Tucson residents who wanted to be in a movie. Among them was a family. Mother, father, and their son, 7 years old. Small for his age, quiet, nervous about being on set, but excited too. His first time seeing a real movie production. The mother talked to the assistant director. "Is it safe for my son?" "Absolutely." The ad assured her, "He'll be in the background, just needs to run when the shooting starts. Very simple, no danger." The mother felt better. The father signed the paperwork. The boy was fitted for costume, period. 1870s, too big for him, but that was fine. He was deep background. Nobody would notice. They positioned him in the saloon near the back. Told him what to do. "When you hear gunshots, look scared and run toward the door. That's it." Easy. The boy nodded, understood. First take action. The gunman burst in, started shooting blanks but loud. The boy ran, but his face wasn't scared. It was excited, thrilled. He was in a movie. This was fun. Cut. Reviewed the footage. Not working. The kid's face is wrong. He looks happy. Needs to look terrified. Let's go again. Second take. Same result. The boy ran but smiled. Having the time of his life. Frustration grew. This was a simple shot. Background action. Shouldn't take this long. Third take, fourth take, fifth take. Each time the boy couldn't produce the right emotion, couldn't look scared. He was too young, too innocent, didn't know how to act fear, couldn't access it on command, called a break, pulled the boy aside, knelt down to his level. "Listen, when the shooting starts, you need to look really scared, like you think you're going to die. Understand?" The boy nodded. But when they ran the take again, same thing. Excitement instead of fear. Snapped. He'd been shooting for 10 hours. The heat was unbearable. The scene was taking too long. He needed this shot, needed to move on. He walked over to the boy, grabbed him by the shoulders, looked directly into his eyes, and started yelling, "You're going to die. You understand? Those men are going to kill you. You're going to die right here." The boy's eyes went wide. He wasn't prepared for this. For an adult grabbing him, yelling at him, shook him hard. The boy's head snapped back and forth. "They're shooting at you. You're dying. Feel it." The boy started crying, real tears, his face crumpled. Terror replaced excitement. He was shaking, sobbing. Let go, stepped back. Perfect. That's the emotion. Now run to your mark. The boy stood there, frozen, couldn't move, too scared, too overwhelmed. Pushed him. Go. The boy stumbled toward his position, still crying, still terrified. The crew watched in silence. This wasn't the first time they'd seen this. Directors did this sometimes with child actors, with extras. It was a method controversial but effective. You needed real emotion, you created real emotion. Nobody liked it, but nobody stopped it either. That's how the industry worked. The boys' parents weren't on set. They'd gone to grab lunch, left their son with the crew, with professionals, trusted that he'd be safe. They didn't know what just happened. Nobody told them. Dean Martin was in his trailer half a mile away, resting between scenes. The western heat was exhausting. He'd shot his scenes that morning, had the afternoon off, was taking a nap, but he heard something even from that distance. A child screaming, then crying. Dean sat up, listened. The crying continued. Something was wrong. Dean got up, walked out of his trailer, headed toward the main set. The closer he got, the clearer it became. A child was in distress, real distress. Dean reached the sound stage, stood in the entrance, took in the scene, was setting up the next take. The boy was standing in position, face red, eyes swollen, still crying, trying to stop, but couldn't. The crew moved around him, nobody comforting him, nobody checking if he was okay. Just another piece of the set, another prop. Dean felt something he hadn't felt in years. Rage, pure, unfiltered rage. He'd seen bad things in Hollywood, seen how people were treated, seen the abuse, the exploitation. Usually looked the other way, stayed in his lane. But this was different. This was a child, 7 years old, being traumatized for a shot, for a scene that would last 3 seconds in the final film. Dean walked onto the set. Didn't announce himself, just walked straight toward Laven. The director was sitting in his chair, reviewing the monitor, planning the next setup. Dean didn't say anything, just grabbed the back of Laven's director's chair, lifted it slightly, and kicked it over hard. The chair crashed to the ground. Laven fell, scrambled to his feet, spun around. What the hell? Dean was standing there, 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, face dark with anger. You ever touch that kid again? Dean said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but everyone heard it. The entire set went silent, and we're going to have a problem. Laven looked around, expecting support, expecting someone to back him up. Nobody moved. What are you talking about? Laven demanded. I'm directing. That's my job. Dean stepped closer. Your job is to direct actors, not terrorize children. The boy was crying. Laven tried to dismiss it. He needed to access the emotion. That's how you get real performances. Dean's jaw tight. He's 7 years old. He's not an actor. He's a kid. And you grabbed him, shook him, screamed in his face, made him cry for a background shot. Laven's face. It's called method directing, creating authentic emotion. Dean shook his head. It's called child abuse. The words hung in the air. Child abuse. Nobody said that in Hollywood, not out loud, not where people could hear. Laven sputtered. I didn't abuse anyone. I was doing my job. Dean looked past him at the boy, still standing in position, still crying, scared to move, scared to stay. Dean walked past Laven, knelt down next to the boy. Hey kid, you okay? The boy looked at him, recognized him. Dean Martin, the movie star. The boy nodded but kept crying. Dean put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Gentle, you did great, really great. But we're done for today. You don't have to do this anymore. The boy looked confused, but the director said the director was wrong. Dean interrupted. You're done. Let's find your parents. Dean stood up, turned back to Laven. He's off this set. If you need child extras for this scene, hire trained child actors with parents present, with a child welfare worker with proper protocols. This kid's done. Laven was furious. You don't get to make that decision. This is my set, my film. Dean stepped closer. Make it your decision or I make it mine. And trust me, you don't want me to make it mine. What does that mean? Laven challenged. Dean smiled. No warmth. It means I walk right now. Tell the studio you lost your lead actor because you abused a child. See how that conversation goes. Laven realized Dean was serious. You're threatening to quit over some extra. He's not some extra, Dean said. He's a child and yeah, I'm threatening to quit. Try me. The producer, Bernard, came running over. He'd heard the commotion. What's going on? Laven pointed at Dean. He's interfering with my direction. Dean pointed at Laven. He's abusing children. The producer looked between them, looked at the boy, still crying, marks on his arms where Laven had grabbed him. The producer made a calculation, a business calculation. Losing Dean Martin would cost millions. Replacing a child extra would cost nothing. The choice was obvious. The producer said carefully, maybe we take a different approach with the child actors. Laven couldn't believe it. You're taking his side. The producer didn't answer, just looked at him. Laven understood. He'd lost. Dean picked up the boy, carried him off set. The crew watched in silence. Nobody applauded. Nobody said anything, but something had shifted. A line had been drawn. Dean found the boy's parents in the commissary finishing lunch. They saw their son in Dean's arms, saw he'd been crying. The mother jumped up. What happened? Dean set the boy down gently. Your son had a rough day. The director pushed him too hard. He's okay, but he shouldn't go back on set. The father stood, pushed him. How? Dean hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. He grabbed him, shook him, yelled at him, made him cry so he looked scared for a shot. The mother's face went white. He what? Dean nodded. I'm sorry, I didn't see it happen, but I heard your son crying and I came. The director won't do it again. But I don't think your son should be in that scene. The father was furious. We should sue. We should go to the studio. Dean shook his head. You could, but it's your word against a director's and the studio will protect the director. That's how this works. The mother held her son. Is he hurt? Dean looked at the boy, checked his arms, bruises forming where it grabbed him. Physically, he'll heal, but he's scared, traumatized. I'd take him home, take him away from this place. Let him be a kid. The parents agreed. Dean took their son and left. They never came back to the set. Dean returned to his trailer, sat down, poured a drink. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger at the industry, at himself for not intervening sooner, for all the times he'd seen things like this and looked away. The assistant director knocked. Dean, the producer wants to see you. Dean knew this was coming, walked to the production office. Bernard was there too, silent, fuming. Dean, Bernard started. What happened today can't happen again. Which part? Dean asked. The part where I stop child abuse or the part where your director commits it? Bernard sighed. His method is unorthodox, but it's illegal. Dean interrupted. In California, you can't intimidate or harm a child for any reason, not even for a movie. Bernard was quiet. Then you threatened to quit. Dean nodded. I did, and I meant it. If that kid had stayed on set, if had touched him again, I would have walked. Bernard looked at. I think we need to be more careful with child actors going forward. Stood up. This is ridiculous. I've been directing for 20 years. I know how to handle actors. Dean's voice cut through. He's not an actor. He's a child. Learn the difference. Left, slammed the door. Bernard looked at Dean. You made an enemy today. Dean shrugged. I've made enemies before. Bernard leaned back. The studio is going to hear about this director's talk. You could get blacklisted for interfering, for threatening to quit. Dean met his eyes. Then I get blacklisted. I've got enough money, enough credits. I'll survive. But that kid wouldn't have survived what was doing to him. Not emotionally, not psychologically. Someone had to stop it. Bernard nodded slowly. For what it's worth, you did the right thing, even if it costs you, even if it costs me. Ruff and Jericho finished shooting in September 1967. Dean and barely spoke. The tension was obvious. The film was released in early 1968. Did okay, nothing special, but behind the scenes, word spread. Dean Martin had confronted a director, had threatened to quit over a child extra. Some directors admired him, saw him as principled. Others saw him as difficult, as someone who didn't respect the chain of command. Dean did get offers, but certain directors wouldn't work with him. Certain studios were hesitant. The blacklist wasn't official, but it was real. Dean didn't care. He kept working, kept performing, but something had changed. He paid attention now to how child actors were treated, to what directors did, to the small abuses that everyone ignored. And when he saw something wrong, he spoke up, sometimes quietly, sometimes not. In 1969, a director on Dean's TV show was rough with a child guest star. Dean had him removed, refused to shoot until they brought in someone else. The studio. In 1971, Dean was offered a film with a director known for pushing child actors too hard. Dean turned it down, told his agent why. The agent spread the word. Other actors started turning down that director, too. By 1973, the director couldn't get work anymore. Dean never talked about what happened on Rough Night in Jericho. Never did interviews about it. Never claimed to be a hero, but the people who were there remembered. The crew members, the producers, the other actors. They saw Dean Martin kick over a director's chair, saw him threaten to walk off a multi-million-dollar production, saw him carry a crying child to safety, and they knew something important had happened. A line had been drawn. A standard had been set. Years later, in 1985, a journalist asked Dean about child actors in Hollywood, about the rumors of abuse. Dean was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, kids don't belong on movie sets unless they're protected, really protected, not just legally, emotionally. They're not props, they're not tools, they're children, and if you can't direct them without hurting them, you shouldn't be directing, the journalist pressed. Did you ever see a child being mistreated? Dean looked at him once. What did you do? I stopped it. How? Dean smiled, that sad smile he did when remembering something painful. I kicked over a chair and made some enemies. Was it worth it making those enemies? Dean didn't hesitate. Yeah, it was worth it. Today, Rough Night in Jericho is a forgotten film. Most people have never heard of it. But the people who study child actor protections know the story, know about the day Dean Martin intervened, know that his actions, though small, contributed to larger changes, better protections, more oversight, stricter rules about how children could be treated on sets. It didn't happen overnight. It took years, decades, but it started with moments like that, with people willing to risk something to protect someone weaker. Dean Martin never saw that 7-year-old boy again, doesn't know what happened to him, doesn't know if he ever acted again or if that day scared him away from Hollywood forever. But Dean knew one thing. For those few minutes, that boy was safe, protected. And sometimes that's all you can do. Protect someone for a moment, make them safe when nobody else will. If this story moved you, subscribe and hit thumbs up. Share with someone who protects the vulnerable. Have you ever stood up for someone when no one else would? Let us know. Ring the bell for more Dean Martin stories. Tar sob, but some change.